Hi everyone, welcome to my very first Flosstube video. My name is Claudia and I go by the Folk Stitcher, which is not actually a reference to my love of Jacob of modern folk embroidery, but rather my love of traditional folk culture, whether it be folk costumes or folk crafts. I love it all. So that's where the name comes from. I guess I'll start with a little bit about me. So I have been stitching for about 10 years now, and I've been watching Flosstube for probably about just as long. And I took a break about 2 years ago from stitching, and I was going down a little bit of a rabbit hole looking for a particular style of embroidery, not cross-stitch, but embroidery from a certain region in Europe. So I was deep in the Google searches when I accidentally came across Jacob's Modern Folk Embroidery website. And so I figured, why not? Let's look at that too. And I absolutely fell in love with the patterns. I love his patterns. I love his colors, just everything. And I went right back into cross stitch because I already had everything anyway. So maybe a little about myself next. I live in Canada. I live in very snowy Canada and very cold Canada right now. I love gardening. I've been, in the last 2 years, really getting into dahlias and zinnias. So my basement has assorted milk crates full of dahlia tubers that are ready to go for the spring. I'm super excited about some dahlia tubers I got last month. I don't even know how they're going to look like. I just know they're going to be pink. And I'm really looking forward to throwing them in a pot and just seeing what they do. Zinnias, I really enjoy those as well. I did a really beautiful bouquet this year, which had dahlias, zinnias, snapdragons. I think there was chamomile in there. I threw some chamomile seeds. It was actually a mislabeled seed pack too. That was the worst thing. It was a mislabeled seed pack. I threw it in there. Chamomile came up, which, if you know, they're like very yellow flowers. They're very beautiful flowers, they're very medicinal flowers, but they're very yellow, and most of my my flowers I've been going with have been like reds and pinks, though I love blues. I had really nice, what are they called again? I don't remember the name of them. They're like, the variety was called Powder Puff. I'm not sure. But they were beautiful, so I've had a little bit of a color scheme going, and so those, I figured, why not? We'll just throw them in there. So I'm really forward looking to spring and getting my garden going. I also really like tea, and for today I decided to make myself some raspberry lemon tea. This is just tea from Twinings, but this is my little beautiful blue bubble mug, which I love it. It's hand painted. So if you see me reaching for that, then you know what it is. Okay, so I figure I might as well just get into the stitching now, right? Oh, no, hold on. Actually, I'm gonna shout out some Flosstubers that I've really enjoyed since I've gotten back into it, because tastes have changed in terms of what I like stitching now. What I stitched 10 years ago is not what I want to stitch now. So the first person I'll shout out is Carmen from Cardamom Pins. She likes Jacob from Modern Folk Embroidery just as much as I do. And she is from Canada as well, and if I'm not mistaken, not actually lives that far from me. She lives in the next province over. The next person I will shout out is X-Stitch MD, who is also a fellow Canadian. Her stitching is beautiful. I've really enjoyed watching her stitching, watching any sort of color changes she makes to flosses. I've really enjoyed that. And she lives on the east coast of Canada while I live central. So now I'll get into my whips. So my first whip is going to be Simple Joy by Little House Needlework. This is stitched on 28 count even weave, 2/2 with the called for DMC. So you can see where I am here. This has been fun to stitch. I've enjoyed the colors. I've enjoyed, as you can see, oh, look at all the rattiness. I got a serger, and since I've been serging everything, it doesn't really fall apart like this. But if you use the like zigzag stitch on your sewing machine, it's a little, or maybe it's just me, maybe I'm just sloppy, but it's has a little more of a tendency to fall apart. I've really enjoyed stitching this. I'm hoping to finish this by maybe midway through this here. Yeah. So the next piece of cross stitch that I have, and I'll tell you guys my conundrum in a second here. So This is Silent Night by Cottage Needlework, and stitched on 28 count Dove Gray Joblin, I think. But I don't know if you guys can see the problem. This is actually not the called for fabric with this pattern. I'm using the called for DMC, but I'm not using the called for pattern fabric, sorry, for the pattern. And I don't know if you guys can see this, maybe it's just me, but is the color of the floss sort of merging in for the background of the roof of the church. Like maybe I'm just either not seeing something in here or I'm making a bit of a fuss. I'm not sure, but it kind of seems to me like I messed up and I should have gone with a darker color if I'm going to use this particular shade of gray for the background. So I don't know what to do with this piece now. It's also January, so I don't know how much longer I want to do Christmas stitching for. So I guess tell me in the comments if you think I should, like I'm slightly tempted just to rip everything out and leave it, I'll be honest. So tell me if you think I should maybe change the color of the roof to something like 2-3 shades darker of DMC, or if I should leave it alone, or if the fabric doesn't work. I don't know. Something is just off with this piece, and like I'm really hoping to salvage it in some way. Like I think it's a beautiful pattern, but what can I do, right? And then the third piece of stitching I have to show you is actually, there's a backstory with this piece. So this is the pattern. It's the Sweetheart Tree Lavender Blossoms Biscornu Pincushion. So 2 things. I have some kits that I had just lying around in my stash, and I figured, hey, this is a good time to do this. I love Biscornus. I think they're super cute. They're a really nice way for other people to look at your stitching and get excited about it who are not cross-stitchers, I find. If you have something on the wall, maybe they're not as excited about it, but like a little thing that they can like hold and touch and feel your stitches, they get a little more excited about that. So 2 things. Until now, I have never stitched on linen. For some weird reason, I have a deep-seated fear of linen. It was like, I have done the natural progression of like Aida, and then I went to even weave and somehow stuck to 28 count. I'm not sure why. Again, maybe 32 count scary. I don't know what it was. I have a lot of 28 count. I kind of need to go through it in my stash. So if you see me stitching on a lot of 28 this year, that's your reason why. I don't have a particular love for 28 count, if you're wondering. So anyway, I decided I was going to conquer like 2 fears of mine. 1, this is 32 count linen, so I was going to have to get over my 32 count problem, and B, my linen problem. So I went into this with extreme trepidation because I was like, oh, here we go. There's going to be slubs. I don't know what to do with the slubs. If there's a really big slub, do I stitch over? Do I stitch through it? I don't know. And then the fact that I was used to stitching on even weave. And so I was used to everything being like perfectly meticulous, and I could, put all my neuroses onto the fabric. But with linen, different story. But I'm glad, and I'm very happy to say that I can say now that I've gotten over my linen fear. It has not been as bad, or it's not a very particularly slubby linen, I don't know. Though there is a different problem with this piece that I started really really being excited about this piece. And then, I don't know if you guys can see that for the model stitching. There's not a lot of cross stitching in this. It's mostly back stitch and specialty stitches. So I probably shouldn't have started with this if I was going to do a Biscornu plus 32 count and linen all at the same time. Oh, and the beading. Beading's beautiful on this, but there's so much of it. There's these beautiful little hearts. There's 4 hearts. And with a Biscornu, you have to do it on, you have to stitch the same thing on 2 pieces of fabric, then you can stitch it together to make that shape. And I'm now at this point where I'm having to do all this back stitching. And I'm not exactly I don't have a problem with back stitching. It's just not necessarily my first love. I'd rather cross stitch any day than back stitch. And it's like all over the place too. There's so much popcorn stitching in it. There's so much beading. I will do this 100% this year. That is one of my big goals, is to get her done. So I will show you. And I can actually show you how I choose to kit my stitches. So some people use Ziploc baggies, some people use project totes. This is my preferred method. I find tins. I collect tins from anything, usually chocolate, and I put everything I need in here. So the reason I find the benefit for tins is you can stick as many rare earth magnets as you need to in it. And it keeps everything. You can throw some needles in here, you can throw your scissors, they'll even stick to the top. And they're all good contained and very closable. And you can keep them in pretty small places because I stitch mostly upstairs in bed, but some downstairs. So any like side table drawers that I have, I can throw this into the smallest ones. I'm not worried about somebody like finding it and opening it. So I'll show you what I have so far. There's not much, just to let you guys know. So I got to the back stitch and I was like, oh, here we go. So this is the start. With this kit, they provide you with the linen. So they provide you with the linen. It's not even back stitching now that I'm looking at it again. There's these special little like V-shaped stitches. I'm hoping you guys can see that. So 2 of them, 2 pieces of linen. I've done the same thing on both of them. I started with all the cross stitches because I was excited. And then I got to this like specialty stitches and I was like, oh, okay, here we go. I can see now why I would find this hard. So 2 pieces of linen. This is also my first foray into hand-dyeds. Sorry, not hand-dyeds, hand-dyed silk. And I'll show you guys that now. It's a beautiful color, by the way. There you go. So it's this beautiful purple, green color, absolutely gorgeous. Like I've done stuff with over dyes where it's like there's some amount of variation in it, but this is two-tone and it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. This is for the hearts. And then I can show you guys the way I stitch. I choose to kit my stuff up. So I take a piece of index card and I hole punch as many one hole per floss, like DMC color. I stitch mostly with DMC. Yes, I do occasionally do hand dyes. Mostly it's DMC. I have so much DMC, guys. 10 years of stitching. I have a bin. I have a bin of DMC that I bought for projects that I no longer like. So they got thrown in the bin and now they're sitting there. Very much not organized. I went through it somewhat yesterday and the color palette is all over the place. And the color palette I'm mostly stitching now are like muted tones. So I'm not sure what I'm gonna do with all this floss. Okay, anyhow, so going back to this, I put the symbols, I draw the symbols on and I write the DMC number, or if it's a hand dyed, I write the name of it. And then I cut my floss, as many as I think I'm probably gonna need. If it says like 4 skeins of it, I'll just cut that right away. Sorry, I don't actually cut all 4 skeins. I'll probably cut 1 skein of it, just so it's not, it would be huge, it'd be a massive mess. I think now people are using floss drops is what I've seen, and those have intrigued me. I will not lie to you, those have intrigued me terribly. But the index card is pretty good. You can write on it, you can erase on it. Well, with the floss drops, like I have a label maker. I know some people are label making, like they'll use a label maker to write the DMC number and then put it on, but like, this is so convenient that like, I'm not sure. Though I do see one massive benefit, the like side of paper, I guess is kind of rough, sharp, whatever you want to call it. And if I use like a plastic, nicely rounded floss drop, then I wouldn't have that issue. So then I can show you guys the beads. This is a beautiful bead kit. The colors are just beautiful. And there's this heart-shaped bead that goes on both sides, right in the middle of all of the, you cross stitch a square and then sew a bead on it, so you don't really see all your cross stitches. So I guess I shouldn't have been so meticulous with my stitching after all. And then of course it comes with a needle, but the needle that this comes with is a John James needle. It also came with a beading needle that I put away. I'm not the biggest fan of John James's needles. I am a Bowen girl. I really, really do like Bowen. And I have a small stash of Bowen. It's not that small. I don't know why I do this. you know, when you need to like hit the minimum free shipping on a website or something, and you think that one day your particular company for something that you prefer is going to go out of business, evidently, and Bowen needles were that thing for me at some point, so I stocked up on like 5 packs of Bowen needles. I don't even go through, like, I don't use my needles so often because I use rare earth magnets on my stand. I don't drop them. And so I'm realistically, I use a needle until it finally, like, where I put my fingers corrodes. It's happened to me like 3 times. It's so unusual. And yet I have enough needles to last me through the needle apocalypse. A few years ago, there was a product available. I can't remember what it was called, but it was like a wax that you had put on. I used it for Krennic, so like metallics, and that company stopped producing it. So I guess I think the same thing will happen. I need to stock up on Bowen needles. Okay, one last piece, and this is the big one. This is, guys, I know I'm a year late for this. This is last year's Salentine by Modern Folk Embroidery. And it is beautiful. This is actually the piece that got me back into cross stitching. I saw this and I'm like, I must stitch this, and I must stitch this immediately. So I went to my stash, I pulled out the DMC needed, and I even had some fabric still on my frame. And I just ripped out the project that was there previously, and I started stitching this guy. So you can see how far I've gotten, though I must confess now, I found this out yesterday and I'm super sad about it. I had the vine pattern here and that like block pattern going. I had stitched it from here, down here, up here. It was off by 2. It was off by 2, and I had noticed it because I had actually stitched it like symmetrically on both sides, so it was off by 1 on both sides. But because of it, when I got to the top here, I noticed that what was on the chart was not actually what was gonna be in line here. And so I'm having to rip all of that out, which I've ripped most of it out. That's what's left. It's a huge job frogging this amount of work, guys. Like on this, like at the same time that I am very annoyed with myself for how, like, what a massive error I made, I'm also horrified at how long it's taking me just to rip it out and get it over with, because I want to stitch it right away. Like, I want to redo it correctly so I can actually get this piece over with. I'm hoping to finish this by the end of February, just in time, I guess, for last year's February finish. I know I'm a whole year late on this, guys. Oh, and you can actually see my needle minder here. Is it upside down? Yes. So I love this little needle minder over here. It reminds me of like cameo jewelry, so I really enjoy it. And then if you're wondering what this is, I use a Lowry stand. And so very rarely, when I'm done with my when stitching for the day, I take the all of this off the L bar, just because I'm like, I've had it for 10 years and this has never happened, and I'm somewhat convinced it's going to, that the eventual weight, and I have a larger frame. I have a frame that's probably double this one. It's extremely heavy. I'm somehow convinced that the weight eventually is gonna like bend the L bar downwards, and I'm gonna be left with a frame at about an angle like this. Has this ever happened in 10 years? Oh, well, I'm gonna take a break. So like 8 years, no. Am I still terrified it's gonna happen? Yes. So I take it off every night, but I don't take the bar, this piece off of my frame. And I also, I don't know if you guys can see that, I have a piece of felt on both sides just to protect the wood. This is an Omonic frame, and they're very, very nice. I really, really like them. I exclusively stitch on scroll frames. If it's a really tiny thing like the Biscornu, then I'll stitch in hand, but for everything else, I just add a little bit extra height, and I'll put it into my scroll frame. I don't have the world's, like, these stretcher burrs are not exactly that big. But yeah, so you can see my stitching there, other than that massive error. And my goal for this piece is to be done by the end of February. So I think provided that I don't make any more mistakes, I hate to say that, then I can get this done by the end of February. So that's everything. Oh, I guess one more thing. The rare earth magnets. I had mentioned those earlier, and I'll just show you. So see, I've got these small rare earth magnets. I stick everything to them. Needles, scissors, and what do you call it? The floss threader. My whole stand has magnets all over it, and I just hang or stick things to it as needed. So now for my 2025 starts. This is everything I'm hoping to start for 2025. Realistically, I will be starting more every time I find some of Jacob's like sleeper patterns. I'm like, I have to add it to my list. So I'm going to show you guys my projects. Everything except for one thing that I've run into an issue with is going to be stitched on 28 count. So I will show you guys that now. First thing, this is a new pattern of Jacob's. I think it's like the last thing he released or the second last thing he released. I don't know. He's very prolific, so I can't keep track. So sorry, this is like the 5th thing he's released now. This is Modern Folk Embroidery, the Dwarven Axe. I haven't seen this stitched yet by anybody on Flosstube. So this is what I'm going with. So I'm doing this for my husband, and I let him go through my stash of fabric and go through my stash of floss because he doesn't like red, apparently. What can I say? And so this is what he's narrowed it down to. I'll show you guys. So these are the 2 fabrics. This is 28 count, I think it's called mushroom. And this is 28 count lamb's wool. So as you can see here, this is pulling cool, this is pulling warm. He wants it to look like parchment. Lord of the Rings themed, right? And then these are the flosses that he's deciding between. So he's going through either green or blue. And I told him as much that like, you're probably you should at least pick flosses that are coordinating with the fabric because he does want it monochromatically stitched like the pattern calls for, but it just comes down to which one he likes. So I'm hoping to bother him into picking which one he wants just so I can serge it and start stitching on that this week, which I'm really excited for. The second start, and I have all my floss already found it in my stash. If that doesn't tell you how big my stash is, I don't know what will. This is Modern Folk Embroidery, a sampler garden. I love this one, guys. This is such a beautiful pattern. I love little birds down here. I love the birds. I love the deer, the birds, the deer, and these flowers in the corner. And sometimes with conversions from hand-dyeds to DMC, I don't find that the colors work as well, but like in this one, I'll show you guys all the flosses together. Oh, this is literally all of them. Look at that. Like here, I'll just pull the colors in question. Don't those look so beautiful together? Like, they work so well together. Jacob is just easily my favorite designer right now. Easily my favorite designer. So I have a piece of 28 count antique white Lugana that I'm going to stitch it on. Yes, it's going to be pretty big because it's a 28 count, which I will show you guys in the next thing. One of the things I have in my pile that has bit me a little bit in my exclusive 28 count stitching. So this one I'm also hoping to start this week. I did find fabric for it, and I have serged it already. So everything's ready to go. I'm super excited to start it. And then this one, I think this is an older pattern of Jacob's. We have friends that are getting married in August, and Jacob has this beautiful wedding sampler. Like, it's phenomenal. However, it's huge. And I am a very slow stitcher, to the point that I joined Flosstube so I can get some accountability on the speed of my stitching. So knowing myself, I decided against stitching the beautiful, beautiful wedding sampler that Jacob has put together. And I figured I actually have to be realistic with myself. They're getting married in August. At the time it was December. I'm not going to do it. Like in 2 years, if I had 2 years, sure. But if I have like half a year, no. So I found this, the flowering heart. And what I'm going to do is swap out the initials on the bottom for their names here. I'll find I'll get the alphabet and I'll just put their names in here and then 2025 in there. I don't see this pattern stitched very often. It's a beautiful pattern of Jacob's. So I think I'm not going to do it in the called for red. What I'm probably going to do is, once again, go through my stash and just find a burgundy or mahogany that will look good. And I'll be stitching this on 28 count white Lugana. And I'm excited to do this one. I think it's going to be a really beautiful wedding gift for them at their wedding, but I actually have to do it, and I have to do it quickly. So I'm hoping to start this one in February, and I'm hoping it won't take me more than 2-3 months. It's a monochromatic stitch, so shouldn't be that bad, right? And then the last thing I have here is Modern Folk Embroidery Fruits of Plenty. This is beautiful. Like, the Salentine's stitch got me back into cross stitch. This is the second pattern I saw that I was like, yes, I also need to stitch this. I need to buy this immediately. So I have some of the floss for this already in my stash, but I'll have to buy most of it. So funny story with this one. The fabric I was going to use, like I said previously, was going to be a 28 count because I have just so much white 28 count that I figured, well, I'll just figure this one too. It is not a full coverage piece, that it is probably as close to a full coverage piece as you can get with a sampler. There's a ton of stitching in this one, so I figured it wasn't going to matter terribly. However, I had actually no clue what a 28 count, what stitching this on 28 count size-wise was going to look, and what it was going to cost to frame. So I have relented. I'm going to stitch this on 32 count, because what else am I going to do with myself? I mean, don't get me wrong, when years ago I really wanted to do like those massive heaven and earth designs, and like, sure, then maybe I could have a massive modern folk embroidery one, but the cost of framing it is just going to be exorbitant, and I've already like put a place in my house visually, mentally. I already found the place in my house for it, and like, if I put it there and it's that big, it's going to look like off. It's going to look off on the wall compared to the other stitching I have over there. So I'm going to buy 32. However, I have not decided now what color of fabric I'm going to do now that I have the ability just to purchase more. I could just get an antique white Lugana. However, XMD Stitch on Flosstube did this with a pink conversion using pink linen. And I always thought it's like, it was so beautiful. And like, I'm extremely tempted to copy what she's done to do this. However, I love this in the blue. And as you can see by my house, I have a very neutral colored house, but I really like pops of color, like pops of deep burgundy, deep blues, greens. I've always liked that, but my walls are neutral. And I'm like somewhat concerned that the fabric that she went with is this, it's beautiful, it's pink, but it's going to be this gigantic pink spot on my wall. So, but I like this fabric, I like this pattern so much that like, if I could, I would stitch it like 3 ways, 3 or 4 ways even, and I would just have them all up on my wall. But I'm not usually a person that likes stitching the same thing over twice. So I would love to have a blue and a pink and a green version of it, and maybe like a brown and light brown version of it, but that's not going to happen, so I have to commit. So I'm not sure yet. So hopefully the next time I'm making a floss tube, I've come to a decision on which colorway I'm going to go with, because I have to order fabric for this. So like do or die, I have to do this. So I'll probably make a decision in the next 2 weeks. So that is all that I have for my plans for 2025. Realistically, I'm going to get more patterns. I'm gonna do more starts. It just depends on what I'm gonna start. And then if Jacob puts out more beautiful things, that's gonna cause problems in my life. I promise he's not the only person I stitch. I do stitch other designers. It's just that he is right now like a game for me. So thank you so much for watching my first Flosstube video. If you guys have any feedback and anything I can do, just leave it in the comments. It would mean a lot if you guys subscribed to my channel. I don't know what I'm doing here, if I'm doing it well, so that would help me know if you guys like my content. All right, so thank you so much for watching this if you got to the end, and see you in a few weeks for my February Flosstube video. Bye!